Let's welcome in Mr. T.S. Harihar, Chief Executive and Founder of HRBV Client Solutions. He's joining us now. Mr. Harihar, thanks so much for being with us on NDTV Profit. Do you have a view on BEML? The government has given the go-ahead for 26% divestment. It is up. It's up 20%. Usually, when we hear news of divestment, the stocks crack. But this move is very different. How do you read this?
No, I think see, we need to remember that BEML also has a fairly strong defense franchise within its entire product basket, and people are looking at BEML as a fairly strong emerging defense play. Apart from the capital goods space where it's anyway been present for a very long time. I think one of the reasons probably BEML has not been able to realize its full potential is that it continues to be a government company. So probably the belief here is that once a large stake sale is done and then it gradually moves towards privatization. I think that the bigger, more important thing is that you move these stocks gradually towards privatization, and then a 20% stake sale is a very clear indication that the government actually wants to get out of this business altogether. So that's a good sign. I think it sends a good signal to the market that in this particular case the government seems to be keen on privatizing the business completely.
All right. So you are very positive on BEML. What about the oil marketing companies with this tug of war between the banks and oil marketing companies over merchant charges? Do you think this is a mountain of a molehill, or do you think this could impact the oil marketing companies? How would you read into this?
See, I think the merchant charges of 1% may not be a very large issue as far as the profitability of these companies are concerned. No, I broadly have one worry as far as the oil companies are concerned, and that is what happens if prices probably move ahead to about $66 to $67 per barrel in the global Brent market. No, I think any government 2 years ahead of an election would not be keen to have a situation where petrol prices have to be hiked by probably 10-15 rupees from these levels. I don't think they would be very comfortable with that. So you may get back to a situation like 2011-2012 where the government would ask the oil marketing companies to take a share of the burden and then look at a future date to get out of it. So these talks about free pricing work till the time oil doesn't cross a certain threshold. The day oil crosses a threshold, then these things actually don't matter too much. They become subservient to the larger political requirement of the day. So I would believe that if oil goes up to about 65, 66 in the next 1 quarter, then oil marketing companies could have a little bit of a problem. So we are a little cautious. I'm not saying we are negative, but definitely we are a little cautious at these levels.
All right. Mr. Harihar, any view on sugar stocks? Buzzing a lot. We're seeing Balrampur Chini at a year high. All these sugar stocks have done well. Anywhere where you think investment bets can be made in the sugar sector?
Oh yes, I think sugar seems to be a kind of a long-term structural play. There seems to be a big shortfall globally as far as the demand, the demand-supply equation of sugar is concerned, and I think that is actually pushing sugar prices up globally. So you can look at a lot of the sugar stocks in India, which have probably gone up 3 to 4 times in the last 1 year. So we do believe that there are pockets of value like your Balrampur, Dhampur, your Dwarikesh sugars. We would still be a little cautious on a handful of stocks which are over leveraged. So we would stay off those sugar companies. But otherwise, the ones I mentioned, I think they still have a lot of value even at these levels.
Right. Mr. Arya, could you also give us your picks?
Yes, I think there are 2 stocks we are positive on. The first, of course, is Tata Motors, which I've been liking for quite some time. I started at around 450, and even at the current price of around 500, we are revising our targets upwards. We originally had a target of about 525, but we are revising upwards to about 575 right now. We still believe it's going to be a great de-risk bet, notwithstanding what happens of a slowdown in India. Its China sales, JLR numbers, I think are going to be a big bet on Tata Motors. The second pick that we have is IRB Infra. Now, this is a company that largely operates on the toll roadways, and surprisingly, when everyone expected that demonetization would have hit the stock substantially, this company actually saw an 8% growth in revenues during the demonetization period. What the company has done is that a very substantial chunk of its revenues, it has already shifted to the online or the digital mode. So that I think is going to hold the company in good stead. So the current price of about 210, 215, we expect the stock to touch a high of about 260 in the next one quarter. The last stock we are short on or we are negative on is ICICI Bank, where again we continue to be negative since the 270 levels. And we believe that the pressure of bad assets would probably pull the stock down to about 225 in the next one quarter.
Right. In terms of banks, well, PSU banks, the results this time around would be interesting. There could be some meaningful deposits with a lot of banks, which could lead to very high growth going ahead or reducing the capital needs.
Oh yes, I think the deposit growth is going to be a very interesting number to evaluate. In fact, we were hoping to get some deposit numbers in the advanced GDP estimates, but apparently...
No, I was talking about on a bank basis itself, something like a SBI, something like a PNB, something like a Bank of India can surprise on the higher side. Their account reach, their overall reach within India is, still not matched by any other sector.
Oh yes, absolutely. You're absolutely right. I think the one thing that has happened in the last 3 months is a huge surge in deposits. But my big question is, what happens after that? We've already seen SBI cutting MCLR by 90 basis points and a lot of other PSU banks following suit. So will this translate into credit? Now, my understanding is probably in a couple of quarters, we could see a big spurt as far as credit is concerned, because what has happened in the last 1 month is that the entire shortfall in transmission has got made up. So I think that will mean that there could be a lot more credit demand coming in, and we could see a credit pickup in the next 2 quarters. It may not happen immediately, but I think wait 2 quarters, all these PSU banks may start looking a lot more attractive than what they're looking today.
Right. Any picks in the PSU bank now? Any numbers that you would be tracking very closely?
No, as I said, the profitability numbers, I'm not too sure how they're going to work on the provisioning. So that's a little hard to guess. But I would believe that if I was to take a value call, State Bank of India at the current market price to me looks to be a good bet. I'm not too sure of a BOB or a PNB because they still need to get to grips with their NPA problems. They're about 10% plus. But I think SBI to me looks to be one company which offers a lot of value at these prices. And considering that they already cut MCLR by 90 basis points, they've got the biggest hoard of deposits in the last 2 months. I would believe SBI seems to be very, very, very interestingly poised.
Mr. Harihar, thank you so much for taking out time for us. Always a pleasure.